The communications tent fell into an eerie hush at exactly 11:32 p.m. when Lieutenant Sarah Chen's voice crackled through the radio for what no one knew would be the last time. For 3 days, she had been transmitting vital intelligence from deep behind enemy lines, her calm voice a lifeline in the chaos of war. Every soldier in Firebase Delta had come to recognize that steady tone. The way she always signed off with, "Dawn is coming." Tonight, something was different. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Captain Marcus Rivera pressed his headset tighter against his ear, his weathered face creasing with concern. Chen had missed her scheduled check-in at 9 p.m., and when she finally came through 2.5 hours later, her breathing was labored, her words clipped. "Firebase Delta, this is Phantom 6, she whispered, using her call sign. "I have critical information. Enemy convoy moving through Sector 7. Ammunition trucks, heavy artillery. They're planning a dawn assault on your position." Rivera's hand trembled as he grabbed his pen, scribbling coordinates on the map spread before him. Around him, 6 other soldiers leaned in, their faces pale in the dim glow of the equipment. Private Jackson, barely 20 years old, clutched his rosary beads. Sergeant Kim turned down every other radio frequency, so Chen's transmission would be crystal clear. They all knew she was alone out there, 30 miles into hostile territory, with nothing but her wits and a damaged radio keeping her alive. "Copy that." "Phantom 6, Rivera responded, keeping his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his gut. "What's your status? Can you extract?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Static crackled for several long seconds. When Chen spoke again, there was something in her voice that made every person in that tent freeze. It wasn't fear exactly, but acceptance, the kind that comes when a soldier knows the mission is bigger than one life. "Negative on extraction, Delta," she said quietly. "I'm compromised. They're searching the building I'm in. I can hear them on the floors below." She paused, and in that pause, they could hear distant shouting, the harsh bark of orders in a foreign language, the methodical sound of boots on stairs. "But I need you to listen carefully. The convoy has a weakness. 3rd truck in the line carries their fuel supply. Take it out, and you'll cripple their entire assault." Rivera's throat tightened. He wanted to tell her to run, to hide, to do anything but stay on that radio, but he knew Chen wouldn't have made contact unless the information was worth the risk. She had always been like that, ever since they served together in their first deployment 5 years ago. She was the one who ran into burning buildings to pull out wounded comrades, who volunteered for the impossible missions, who never left anyone behind. "Sarah," he said, breaking protocol by using her first name. "We can send a team. We can get you out." The other soldiers nodded frantically, already reaching for their gear. Jackson was on his feet, ready to move. Kim had pulled up extraction routes on her tablet, but Chen's soft laugh through the radio stopped them all cold. "You know that's not possible, Marcus," she replied, her voice tender now, almost peaceful. "The convoy will reach you by 5 a.m. You have 5 hours to prepare. Don't waste them on me." The sounds in the background grew louder, doors slamming, voices getting closer. Chen's breathing quickened, but her words remained clear. "I need you to promise me something. Tell my sister I was thinking about the lake. She'll understand. Tell her the water was beautiful." Rivera's eyes burned with tears he refused to let fall. "You can tell her yourself, Lieutenant. That's an order." But even as he said it, he knew. They all knew. The footsteps through the radio were almost on top of her now. Someone was shouting, demanding that doors be kicked in, that every room be searched. Chen's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Remember what I taught you all. Fear is just a feeling. It doesn't have to control the action." She had said those exact words to Jackson during his first firefight when he froze behind cover, too terrified to move. She'd said them to Kim when she lost half her unit in an ambush. She'd said them to Rivera himself when he questioned whether he could lead after his commander fell. Now she was saying them one last time, not just to them, but to herself. "They're at the door," she breathed. Then louder, with that same steady strength they'd always known. "Firebase Delta, this is Phantom 6, dawn is coming. Make it count." A crash echoed through the transmission. Shouting erupted. And then silence. Not static, not white noise, just absolute devastating silence. The radio operator frantically adjusted dials, trying to re-establish contact, but the connection was gone. For 30 full seconds, no one in that tent moved. No one breathed. Jackson's rosary beads slipped from his fingers and clattered to the floor. Kim pressed both hands over her mouth, her shoulders shaking. Rivera stared at the radio as if sheer force of will could bring Chen's voice back. But finally he stood, his jaw set with grim determination. "She bought us 5 hours," he said, his voice rough but firm. "She gave us the intel we need to survive. So we're going to honor that sacrifice. We're going to win this fight." He looked at each soldier in turn, seeing his own grief reflected in their faces, but also something else: resolve, purpose, the kind of strength that Chen had always inspired in others. "Get the artillery units ready. Find that convoy. Target that fuel truck. And when dawn comes, we make sure her last transmission wasn't in vain." The tent erupted into controlled chaos as soldiers rushed to their stations, shouting coordinates, preparing weapons, organizing defensive positions. But even in the urgency, even in the rush of preparation, each of them carried the weight of what they'd heard, the echo of her final words. Before the sun rose at 6:15 a.m., Firebase Delta would face its greatest test. The enemy convoy was intercepted at exactly 4:53 a.m., the third truck erupting in a fireball that lit up the pre-dawn darkness and scattered the assault force into disarray. When the smoke cleared and the base stood intact, Rivera walked out beyond the perimeter and looked toward the distant mountains where Chen had been. The sky was bleeding pink and gold, the new day breaking exactly as she'd promised. "Dawn came, Sarah," he whispered to the wind. "Just like you said it would." And though she would never hear it, though she would never come home, her voice would live on in every soldier who'd heard that last transmission, in every life she'd saved with her final act of courage, in every dawn they'd see for the rest of their lives.